This is Just a Few Questions. I'm Marc Sims. My guest is Raymond Lopez. Raymond Lopez is the alderman of the 15th Ward here in the city of Chicago. Welcome to the show, Raymond Lopez.
How are you, my friend? Glad to be back.
It's been a few months. I'm so glad you're here. But Alderman Lopez, let me just get right into it and ask you, what is on your mind?
You know, I feel like we have a city spinning out of control here. We've got the mayor in D.C. as we speak, spouting lies. We got politicians in our neighborhoods trying to deflect from what's going on. And we've got a financial cliff that we're about ready to jump both feet off into the abyss with more debt, more spending, and ultimately more taxes. All the while, our neighborhoods are not being repaired. Our kids are not learning, and our seniors are afraid to even look out their windows from behind the curtains out of fear of being struck with a stray bullet. It's time for Chicago to get serious. Your listeners know it, you know it, and hopefully we can accomplish some of that today in today's interview.
No, we're gonna solve the world's problems, and maybe not the world's problem. We're gonna solve Chicago's problem in 10 minutes. Now, hopefully, people listen to this podcast 6 months from now, or even 6 years from now. But the other day, not too far from my house, a young lady was shot. 15-year-old was shot at like 93rd. Well, no, near 87th in Lafayette. And what I care about, is that hopefully within a few days, the police, whoever, like, no one likes snitches. I understand no one likes snitches and tattletales, but hopefully somebody will say, okay, these are the people. Let's arrest these young men. And I don't know how old they are. I don't think of a young man or old man, whoever was shooting. Arrest them and assure the people in that neighborhood and in that perspectives charter school, if you will, perspective charter school, that we got this. It's over with. This situation is over with. We're gonna do crime. So what I'm saying is this: Alderman Raymond Lopez, when is the city of Chicago, and whoever's mayor of the city of Chicago, is going to say we're going to change this perception of Chicago being a crime-laden, ridden, horrible city? When are we going to stop? When are we going to change this perception, Alderman?
Well, I think you can change the perception when you acknowledge reality. If you go to the doctors and you're sick, you don't magically get better by just thinking that, well, I'm just going to pretend I don't have cancer and everything's going to go away. You have to treat the disease. You have to acknowledge the symptoms, treat the disease, and cure the body. 3 easy steps, right? Same applies to the city of Chicago. And right now we have so many people who are leaders who are ignoring the symptoms because they don't want to acknowledge the disease, the rot that is out there in our neighborhoods, in our own families. The episode you just described happened at 7:15 in the morning, where the 15-year-old girl was shot because she was going to school while a couple of jerks with beef decided that during school drop-off was the opportune time to start shooting at each other. I have yet to hear the mayor say, what are we doing? I have yet to hear people stand up and say, turn these people in. Like you just said, there's no code of silence when you start shooting babies who aren't involved in your beef. So we need to know who it is. And you need someone to be able to call that out immediately, swiftly, and with resolute fervor that people believe. Not the mamby-pamby, just misguided youth or whatever you want to call it. No, you need to call people for what they are, address acts for what they are in our neighborhoods, and move forward from there. And that's how you start changing the perception, when you show that from top to bottom, we are not taking this anymore. Because I wish that we could all have the same pride in Chicago that we used to see a decade ago. If people said you were from Chicago if you told people you were from Chicago when you went on a trip, everyone would almost universally say, oh, I love that city. Oh, or the Sears Tower, the Cubs, unfortunately. They would say things about the Bears or the Bean even.
Well, I'm still a White Sox fan, but keep going.
I'm still, nobody ever prides themselves on the White Sox.
I do.
Even though I'm a White Sox fan.
Yeah, keep
going.
But
I get it. That's what, I'm talking about out-of-towners.
I know. But we got to remind them as of right now. We don't know what the future is. Right now, we got two teams, okay?
We got two teams, even though one hasn't won a single game during all of spring season. But, whatever. We got it. But now, when you go out of town and you say you're from Chicago, people usually take 2 steps back. They look at you, sizing you up, and he'll ask you, have you ever been shot? or they feel like they're going to face bodily harm just by standing so close to you. And that's not the perception we need. And that perception isn't just about tourism. That perception is about finances. That's about investment from private people coming to our city. That's about building neighborhoods. All of that takes a toll. And when people say, what do we have to do to get the city back on track? It's very, very simple. You need to restore the perception and reality that we are safe in the city of Chicago. All neighborhoods have challenges, but you cannot have a city where every neighborhood has been dropped to the point where no one is safe anywhere in the city of Chicago. And that's what recent politics and recent far left extreme politicians have done. They've made every neighborhood equal in terms of the lack of safety, as opposed to pushing for every neighborhood to be equally safe. They've made every neighborhood equally unsafe, and we need to reverse that immediately so that we can start building up our community, so our children can grow up without more holes than what God gave them. That should be our goal.
But I don't see that fervor. I mean, when I see the city council, I'm threatening to go down there one Wednesday. But when I see the city council on the TV news or on the internet, I don't see a commitment across the board to say we're gonna make sure that. Let me go far afield. They have all these programs out here. We got all of this. I've been hearing program this and helping the youth. I've been hearing it all my damn life. Been in Chicago for a long time, all my life, right? But there are a few young men, and sometimes a little bit older, and some of these murderers are 30, 40, 50 years old. It's ridiculous, but they still act like children. But I'm saying,
and I'm going to remind you again, also young women.
Yeah, I don't want to be. I hate. I don't. That's a whole nother subject. Wow, we
dodged that last time I was.
I'm an old man, so
bring that up again.
I would step into it and get the women really mad if I start. If some of my misogyny comes out, it's over. You know what I'm saying? So I got to calm down. That's saying, but I know where you're going. We'll talk about that off the air. But my thing is, there's a few people that cause mess in the neighborhood, and there are young people, and sometimes in their 20-year-olds, and they're not part of anything. They're not going to school. They're not going to work. And they're not part of any organization or something that's trying to build up their skills and their confidence, because skills pay the bills. And so how do we find these people to help them and say, okay, I know what you need, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What do you need so you can stop being a fool? Let's go.
Well, I think we have to face a couple things, right? We have to acknowledge that we have not only seen one lost generation, but we're probably on the third lost generation where we've completely just abandoned those young men and women who you just referenced, the ones that no program, no job, no nothing is going to get them off that corner doing what they do. And more than likely, the outcome of their life will end in a pine box. We also know that we spend and pride ourselves, unfortunately, on spending hundreds of millions of dollars in the city of Chicago on diversion programs, on violence interruption programs, and all these other great things that you just mentioned, which may have started out with the best of intentions 20 years ago, but now are just poverty peddling machines for people to funnel money to their friends, to their churches, to their political campaign cronies, so that they could stay in power. They have nothing to do with stopping violence, interrupting violence, and helping people develop soft skills so that they can break the cycle on the streets. They say that on paper, but when you look at what their actual live outcomes are, they are wholly different. And nobody wants to touch on that topic because you're going to aggravate some of these folks who are heads of these big not-for-profits who have way too much sway in our neighborhoods and in our politics. Because if you tell them that they've failed, what are you doing with our money? Then you're going to be on the receiving end of their retribution, because they will turn their not-for-profit organization into a political one and come out swinging against you, which is why so many people in city council are reluctant to say anything and just keep throwing more money down the well. The problem with all of that is that you are doing a monumental disservice to communities that could actually benefit if you actually just set some metrics for success and some demands for positive live outcomes moving forward. You cannot simply say that touching someone in a zip code is servicing a zip code. You cannot simply say talking to someone once should be marked as interrupting violence between gang members, because we know that violence and building that trust and building that network requires dedication. It requires patience. It requires an ability to understand mistakes will happen, but the goal has to be different from what we continuously see. And sadly, a majority of city council, in particular, all those that espouse all of those farther left views that I usually take, are always eerily and deadly silent when it comes to how do you hold our partners accountable so that we're getting the best results forward. We give contracts, $1.6 billion in contracts across all departments in the city of Chicago every year, notwithstanding what I'm talking about right now. And all of those contracts have measures for success, measures for expectation, measures for outcomes. But yet when it comes to the not-for-profits, we're constantly moving the goalposts further and further so that they never actually achieve the mission. Because the mission, if it is successful, will bring an end to the funding. And that's something that we need to address, that there are individuals who don't necessarily want to see an end to the violence, because if the violence stops, so does the funding.
The show is over. I know you're busy. You got to go back to work. But first, I got to thank you for doing the show, because I can't thank you enough. I'm going to find this Clay Sharkey. Clay Sharkey was some dude, University of Pennsylvania, some college professor. He had a great quote about people who have an organization. They really, I can't even. I'm going to look it up, put it in the show notes, people. Let's look at the show notes. I'll find a Clay Sharkey quote. I'll misquote it, but it's so good about you. It's a lot of charity, and it's very little change. And I can't stand. I need to do a whole show on that. Alderman Raymond Lopez, thank you for being my guest, but don't go away by giving some inspiration to the people of Chicago and maybe some of your alderman companions, and say, hey, we're going to stop this crime. We're going to change the perception of Chicago. Chicago's a great place, and soon enough, it's not going to be known for crime. Go right ahead.
Look, my family's been in the city of Chicago 100 years. I'm a third-generation Chicagoan, and I love my city. I think many of us, overwhelmingly, almost all of us, love our city, especially those that were born here. It's worth fighting for because we know what it can do. We know what it can be. And we have survived some of the most horrendous situations in history. The Great Chicago Fire, things of that nature. We can survive modern stupidity. We can reclaim our city. We will reclaim our city and bring it back to the glory that it is, because this is the city of Chicago, 188 years strong, and it will be here for another 188 years, better than we found it today.